You have to stand up, you have to try again, and you have to keep going. And I think that mindset is super important in terms of building resilience.
Are you a fitness-loving foodie? Then Defy Snacks is for you. Defy offers real, high-quality chocolate you love, combined with functional ingredients, giving you as much as 26 grams of protein per bag, so you can be both a little bit bad and a little bit good at the same time. As a female-owned brand, Defy dedicates a portion of its profits to other women-owned businesses. Currently sold in the US, you can find us on snacks.com and follow us on social at Defy Snacks.
Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, the creative effectiveness ad tech platform. And this is a regular podcast about the future of data-driven marketing. And it's my absolute joy, privilege and pleasure to interview someone new and exciting and interesting and talented from the industry. And this week is absolutely no different. I'm on a call with Tom Fenwick-Smith, who is senior in-house creative at 3UK. Tom, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you give us a brief background?
Oh, yeah, it's great to be here, Tom. Thank you so much for asking me. Currently, I'm working with 3, and we've been helping for the last 3 years to build their in-house creative agency. Although I'm sure it's no secret to a lot of people out there, we are currently going to be going through a merger with Vodafone. But the in-house space is super interesting at the moment. And it's been a real... it's been a real learning and a real change from the agency. I often talk about how in agencies, it's kind of like a collection of pirates. You're all kind of bandits, cutthroats, eccentrics, but you're all seeking the same treasure. My experience with in-house is that you kind of have to get rid of some of that roughness and kind of be a bit more skilled up. So it's a bit more like working for a political party. You have to kind of understand and get to know other people's ambitions, where they're coming from, and what is important to them in order to make the creative ideas succeed. So it's been a real learning for the last 3 years. My route into the industry has been a little bit varied. I didn't get here in a very linear fashion. I started in the film industry because I was totally obsessed with storytelling and wanting to tell stories. Even from very young, I kind of loved mythology and everything that came with it. And so at 18, I kind of packed my bags and went off to go and join whatever film industry element I could, and ended up being a runner in Soho, as many of us did, getting people's lunches, working in edit houses, doing all sorts of stuff before finally landing on the floor of feature films, music videos, commercials, where I did about 35 features, over 100 music videos, and over 100 commercials. And in that, really honed the craft of being able to tell stories. And I got to work with some incredible people, from Sir Christopher Nolan, as of today, Ridley Scott, all kinds of different people from that kind of era, and watched them very closely as they put stories together. But the route I was going down there was an assistant director, and it was I was slowly being morphed into a sergeant major, who was kind of, my enemy was time, and my creative output was the creativity of being able to manipulate that time in order to get the best results, which is a handy skill to have, but not necessarily very creative. And then I retrained at the SCA, the School of Communication Arts 2.0. I'm forever grateful to Mark and his team over at the SCA, because the second I walked in the door, I felt at home, and I kind of knew I'd found my tribe of people, and was able to really connect with being a creative and what it meant, and the kind of excitement that comes with being a creative, and the fact that you're kind of looking for these great insights that you can dig out yourself or find through data or anything to create a human insight, and then build great creative ideas off the back of that. And it was super exciting. It was a real light switch moment for me. And then from there, I went on to spend some time at RGA, a little bit of time at Google, some time at Havas, before landing at Poke, which then became Publicist Poke, or Poke Pub. Poke was absolutely incredible. It was a place of real creativity, and it was right on the cusp of understanding digital work in a way which I don't think many people at the time were really in the industry kind of could get, and how you could connect APIs and how you could build certain things, and all these social media platforms were being born, and the ways in which we could creatively manipulate them to tell stories. And everyone that worked there was an incredibly talented, like very specialized person, and it was a real melting pot of ideas, of people, of points of view. It was fantastic. And then from there, Jack Morton, which was a fantastic experiential agency, and Rewind, where I did AR, VR, all kinds of new tech and innovation, learning to tell these kind of new stories in a new way. Before COVID happened, everything kind of dropped out, and then ended up going to 3 to help build their in-house agency. Sorry, that is a very long answer, Tom. Is that all right?
Yeah, you didn't read the brief there, did you? Brief answer, but it was...
Brief answer, sorry, mate.
You did that in an interesting way. And it's funny you mentioned Mark Lewis. He was a relatively early guest on the podcast. And when someone says, like, what was your favorite episode? Actually, it was probably Mark's in some ways, principally because he showed up with a Buddhist monk. He was like, can this Buddhist monk come on the podcast? And I was like, yeah, sure. So, and that was back in the day where you go for a few pints and then do the recording when I was sort of less confident. Says a lot about me. But he was talking about how he put creativity into a spreadsheet. Right. So it's like, when you come up with an idea that's good or gets a good reaction, score the reaction out of 10, and then try and remember what was the process of you arriving at that idea. Was it in the morning? Were you in the bath? Were you going for a run? Did you be watching a movie? Were you high? Whatever. And to start to get your own data on where your best ideas might come from. And I was just like, what is this? And then with this, I think Ben the Buddhist or something that came along with him. So it was all very surreal. But and that was like 5-6 years ago or something. So that says lays testament to him as a character, and clearly the profound impact he had on you.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I remember Ben the Buddhist. He was like, I think when you first join, you have like, I mean, lectures is the wrong, like, people come and just talk to you and they kind of give these great presentations. And the second I started that learning model, because it's so different, and being someone who's like dyslexic and a couple other neurological bits thrown in as well, the traditional learning model didn't work. And the way Mark managed to change it became so engaging and so fascinating. And Ben was like, probably week 3, Ben came in, and I remember his talk was just, it was like fascinating. And that was the great thing about the SCA. It wasn't just learning a syllabus and going block by block. It was learning about exciting things in the world and how you connect them to what you're trying to achieve. So we'd have like people, legends from the industry coming in, and then you'd have people like Ben the Buddhist, and then you'd have like neuroscientists, and you'd have just this incredible melting pot of just brilliant people which were at your fingertips to be able to discuss stuff with. And out of that kind of mix comes the creativity. It pops up later in any kind of different way, whether you're trying to crack a brief or just having conversations. It was fantastic. I loved it.
So we've gone so wildly off piece with this podcast. I'm going to try and struggle it into its normal format. So the question I would ask you is, like, you've had this really interesting career. I mean, in some ways, Tom, it's got a lot worse. You make music videos and feature films, and now you're an in-house creative. But I understand your path, and I respect that, and I'm just teasing. But in that journey, what has been the best investment of your own time, energy, or money? Your own stuff in that career. What's been good?
I think I alluded to it a little bit in my previous answer, but I think the best investment I've made is my time with other people, as much as possible. And any time I can spend with people who either know more than me or come from a different background or come from a different working background as well, anything to just to be able to discuss with them. And that can come in like many ways. Like I love constantly just listening to people and asking them about their chosen skill, their talent, their obsession. I love knowing people's obsessions, because you'll find if you ask someone about what their obsession is, they will be an utter expert in it. And even if it's a subject I would normally find quite boring, they will make it interesting for me to listen to 99% of the time to me. That's
one of our go-to interview questions when you've sort of done the dance of asking all the things that you should. I always say, what is your kind of crazy passion point? But then you always get like a bunny look on people's faces, and then like, should I tell them about like this thing? But then you see the real person. Then you see how articulate they are. Then you see how creative or interested or all that kind of stuff. So what's yours? What is your subject that you know most about outside of work?
Currently, this is the thing. I fall into obsessions. There's probably a new one every couple of years. My new one is Muay Thai, is Thai kickboxing. And I'm a couple of years into that. And I sort of discovered it by accident after doing a white collar boxing fight, because I thought it was super important to do something that scared me. And I'd never been in a fight or whatever. And I realized how underprepared I was for such a meteoric event. Because it's quite a big deal. It takes a lot to be able to do it. It's quite scary. So I found a fella in my local boxing gym who had the most crooked nose and trained with him. And then he turned out to be a world champion Muay Thai and K1 fighter. And I was lucky enough to train with him once a week for the last 3 years. And it's been unbelievable. And it kind of, not only just working with someone like that who's got a mindset I've never seen, of a proper world champion, like totally determined to go towards a goal. And it was fascinating just working with him and talking with him. And then he kind of led me into the passion I have for Muay Thai. So now I'm starting to learn all the fighters, all the fights. I know when they're on. I'm very excited about ONE's partnership with Sky at the moment, because ONE is the biggest fighting championship in the world, but we don't really watch it here. We're more of a UFC kind of peeps. But if anyone watches ONE, it is stunning. And so, yeah, it's kind of become my obsession. It's not one for everyone. I totally get that. Some people look at me and they think I'm totally mad. But for me, it's been something that I've lent towards, especially to grow resilience as well. It's something I practice. I try my best, and I often go. And when you spar with a world champion once a week, you're going to lose. But you have to stand up. You have to try again. And you have to keep going. And I think that mindset is super important in terms of building resilience.
I'm now going to ask you about data-driven marketing, because I think that is the kind of intellectual equivalent of throwing you a punch you're not expecting. But it is that podcast. So what is your best bit of advice to become a better data-driven marketer? I'd
love to think that this was a gem which was fully unique to me. But it's the blend of data insights with storytelling and empathy. There is nothing I like more than finding a really juicy, incredible problem which comes from data. The birth of those problems is the thing as a creative which makes me excited. But what I see time and time again is people hang the creative on the data rather than the human element that's developed towards it and how it's got there. There's a project, and it's often about bringing, because when you understand that human element, there's often something on the other side of the fence that you can grab onto, which then creates something really, really special. There was one project I did kind of as a interesting solo piece, and it was based on a bit of data which I saw around Alzheimer's in the UK being one of the fastest growing conditions in people over the age of 50 in the last 10 years. And the spike of it is increasing immeasurably. And I was talking to someone at a conference who was studying the proteins which lead to the plaquing of the brain, which then helps to start certain forms of Alzheimer's. After this, I then was discussing something else with someone around how music triggers memory. And this led me to kind of connect these two kind of thoughts together and be able to build something, which was a small project which we did called Meet Betty. And Betty was a digital box which anyone could use, and it was very, very simple. And all you had to do was put your date of birth into Betty, and Betty would bring back the songs that were most relevant from your age, between the ages of 15 and 25, with the consideration and thought that those songs would be able to trigger some memories from some very core points in your youth, i.e. your first kiss, first dance, the first girl you loved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we managed to build a prototype and test this with a few people and kind of lean towards how we would kind of manufacture it. I really wanted to take it to M&S, who apparently have a great back catalogue of fabrics and all sorts of interesting things. It's like real heritage stuff, so you could design a box, personalize it for any of your relatives. And we didn't quite get the project off the ground, but that sort of thing, that's what I mean. When you find these kind of data insights and you can bring them back to a human perspective, I think you can find some real magic in being able to build things.
Yeah, it reminds me of there's and yet another Beatles documentary on Disney, would you believe? And there's an interview with Smokey Robinson of Miracles fame, and he was and this quote really stayed with me. Is that actually what's the exact phrase? I think it's like music's it's medicine, right? That you when you hear a song, it can really heal you. I mean, if you stick your headphones in and listen to kind of like focused music on Spotify all day, you're unlikely to feel like that. But like, music is unique in its power to heal us, you know, heartache or exhaustion or being misunderstood or all of that stuff, you know. And that really struck me, that comment. And so when you said that, it's like, yes, a song, I think music, certainly for me, is the most effective time machine. Like, you know, I'd listen to an early Oasis album. I'm 18 instantly again. Do you know what I mean? I can see the clothes I'm wearing. I can see the street I'm walking down. I can see myself sat outside a pub smoking a fag, thinking I was cool, but not being cool. You know what I mean? Whereas you show me a pair of jeans, I wouldn't have that response. Or I read an article in the newspaper from that day, I'll be like, but music, it fires off so many different parts of your brain and takes us to different places and heals us.
100%. And I think, you know, smell does a similar thing, and we were looking at ways in which we can interact with that as well, but it didn't quite it wasn't quite as easy to access a database of smells. But with sound, it's so, the memory that it connects to is so visceral. As you touched on, like there are definitely certain songs I can remember where I was, I can remember what I was doing, I can remember how old I was, how I felt, you know, what the feeling was behind that song in the moment. And it's very rare to be able to find something else that can do that and really connect. And it's not unique to an individual sometimes, you know. If you think of people that experience big festival experiences, you know, certain tracks will really kick off emotional responses for them and genuinely connect their brain and make their body feel something. It's very powerful.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. Once again, we're miles and miles off track, so I feel like this, you know, the grown-up here, which is rare for me. So we're now going to talk about your shiny new object. Not for as long as I'd hope, but anyway, let's get into it. So your shiny new object is the human element of AI. What is that, and why is it your shiny new object? And if you can, let's try and keep it vaguely on marketing.
Yeah, brief. Well, I think because I've been around for a little bit, and I've been lucky enough to live in a time frame where I've seen the development of various bits of new technology, from like social platforms to things like Spotify and all these kind of new things that we kind of take for granted. And there's always a bit of a user cycle with them of how people use them. With AI, it's become slightly different because the guardrails surrounding it are asking us to use it in a certain way. And I think there's a lot of concern around AI and it's taking jobs and all those sort of things. And the thing I'm looking forward to within that is how human beings can reclaim the use of AI and how we can still own the storytelling. I think that I came into this business because I wanted to kind of make people feel something. And similar, you know, that's always what I was trying to do with a lot of my creative work and any kind of films I've ever made and all that kind of stuff. And I think we're at a really interesting place now where we can explore how we can still make people feel things given the power that we're going to have behind us with AI. And we're going to see such an explosion in projects development, all this kind of stuff. And it's going to be the cream that rises to the top. And I think that cream will be based on people that have been able to hack or understand how to make people feel, even having all this innovation around them still. So human, the feeling of human and those things that come with them will become the premium, if that makes sense. That's my belief. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, and it's not a million miles from my thinking. Just came off being interviewed on someone else's podcast, and they're like, you know, how do you automated creative use AI, and like our thing is that you should use generative AI to do things you couldn't do before, not to do the things you were doing before faster and cheaper. Because everyone is going to use it to do what they're currently doing faster and cheaper, right? That's the sort of a base level of intelligence that goes into it. So like, right, we need to crank out a ton of banners in all these different languages for all of these different platforms in all of these different markets, right? You can automate that stuff, right? You can use AI, you can crank that out, right? But then so can your competitors. Like, and the analogy I use is email, right? At some point, not very many people used email, and then there would have been an innovator who goes, do you know what? I'm going to use email in my office, and we're not going to like have meetings as much. We're not going to type stuff out. We're not going to send letters. We're going to use email. And someone would have been on stage at a conference saying this, and everyone would be like, "Whoa, that'll never stick," and all this kind of stuff. So, and eventually it catches on, and it was a competitive advantage to begin with. But then as soon as everyone's doing it, there isn't an advantage. It's a zero-sum game, right? So, and I think the same will be true with AI for average ideas and average production, right? Everyone will save a certain amount of time and money in producing the thing that they were currently doing. However, our clients, the way that they're using it in a very progressive way is to go, well, what can we do with Gen AI that we couldn't do before, right? So you've got brands who are going, well, normally what we do is we put our shot in the foreground of a scene, like on a beach or in a bar or in a bathroom or in a wherever, and we could afford to do 4 of those shoots a year or one of those shoots. Whereas now you can do as many as you want. But what you can do with automation is you can test all of those different scenarios. You can say, right, okay, so we're going to run all of those scenarios with our product in it to all the audience, and then we can learn from the audience how do they want to be communicated with. And you couldn't do that before without Gen AI because it would just be financially unfeasible. Whereas now what you can do is you can unlock new insights by using Gen AI to create ads at scale. Whereas I think everyone's thinking, right, brilliant, we'll just get we'll get ChatGPT to write our copy, but then everyone else is going to do that. Everything's going to sound the same, and your job as a marketer is to stand out, not to fit in.
And this is why when building a team and when working with creatives, I'm a massive proponent of neurological diversity and just different ways of thinking, because creativity is individual. It comes from lived experience so much of the time. And I think, as you say, you can have this base level of AI that can churn out a creative option. You can do hundreds of different A/B tests with very basic creative, and I'm sure you can see results, but you won't have anything that truly connects and lives rent-free in someone's psyche, because it hasn't connected with them at a human level at the moment. And I think, Coca-Cola did, they just redid their ad using full AI, and I think it was a great technical achievement, but it did leave me not feeling much, right?
Oh, no, I don't think it was a technical achievement at all. I thought it was like I mean, as a Brit, I don't think we have people all over the world listening to this podcast, but as a Brit, like the Coca-Cola advert, it was one of those kind of like, it's a green shoot of Christmas. The first time you hear Mariah or Slade or have a mulled wine, it's like, it's one of the gateposts to the Christmas experience, right? But I saw the advert and I just was going, I didn't feel Christmassy. Like, number one job of a Coke advert, like if it was like, I don't know, some kind of thing with 3D influencers and they'd really broken the mold, fine. But what they tried to do was just like deliver the same old, right? But the insight I have from a source who remained nameless is that apparently Coke have invested like $1 billion into Microsoft AI tech. So actually that campaign was a B2B campaign from Microsoft, which gives it a very, well, it wasn't, but it was.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes back to this uncanny valley theory, which I know a lot of the guys, if you've probably got lots of listeners that kind of work in the virtual reality, mixed reality space, but it's something that those guys have been juggling with for a long time. And it's a built-in human part of our brain, which just is uncomfortable with something that doesn't feel human. And it's built into our evolutionary tract, right? And nothing's been able to beat that yet.
You'll go to a marketing conference, and there'll be two tracks, right? For argument's sake, there's the AI track, and then there's the influencer track, right? And the word everyone's going to say over and over with influencers, as they should, is authenticity, right? It's about having an authentic influencer relationship, and it's an authentic activation. So when that person says this product's ace, it sounds like they actually mean it, right? If you remove the authenticity, you remove the effectiveness. But yeah, on the other hand, we're like, right, well, yeah, we're going to use like Gen AI to completely synthetically make people because it's cheaper. It's mad. It's the same industry, but we're like pulling these in completely different directions while patting ourselves on the back about how clever we are.
Well, as someone who works with creators an awful lot, you know, their authenticity is really what makes our engagement and our, you know, it sells our products in whatever way, right? And if you take that away, it just, it doesn't feel right. I find it really interesting that the explosion of creators has happened at the same time as the kind of the growth of AI, right? As you say, it's pulling in two different directions. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes. It leads back to what I was saying earlier. I really do think that human will become premium.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because once everyone's AI production, then what's going to be the differentiator is an idea. And if everyone's using AI to produce the same ideas, then it's the human that can think tangentially, which will be the competitive advantage, I think, is your point. I mean, I saw a brilliant tweet I saw on LinkedIn saying this guy was on a flight to New York or somewhere, and he said that he watched an exec from one of the big four accounting firms use ChatGPT to write every word of a 50-page report for their clients. I don't know. It might not even be true. It might not even be true, right? But it feels like it probably. Like there's some truth in there. Maybe it's just a brilliant LinkedIn post. I don't know.
And also, you know, never let facts get in the way of a good story, you know?
Well, that's it. Or never let AI get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably a good place to leave it. Look, Tom, I've enjoyed this so much, man. And I feel we've definitely not necessarily delivered on the promise of the podcast, but it's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for your time.
And if someone wants to get in touch with you, where is the best place to do that, and what makes a message that you'll actually bother replying to?
You can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn and just tell me your obsession. I know that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But genuinely,
that sounds quite sexy.
It does, doesn't it? Now I've said it out loud. It sounds a bit weird, but genuinely, obsessions are the way to pique my interest.
Brilliant. Right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That'd just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.